So I want to clarify a few things before I get this bastard of a video over and done with so I can move on with my life at last. Number one, if you're someone who's expecting a glowing review of how magnificent and amazeballs The Force Awakens is, you're going to be disappointed. Numero two, if you're someone who's expecting a completely negative review, or I'm just going to completely rip everything to shreds and say this movie is like the worst thing ever, you're going to be disappointed. Number three, if you think I dislike this movie because I hate everything Star Wars produced by Disney, you're fucking wrong. I have a couple videos where I blatantly say how much I actually really like the Disney Expanded Universe. In fact, some of the stuff that they've released is probably some of my favorite stuff Star Wars related, period, like Twilight Company and the Karen Gillan Darth Vader comic book. So if you're going to try to use that whole thing to discredit my entire opinion, fuck off. Number four, if you're going to call me sexist because I think Rey is a blatant Mary Sue, no, I'm not. I think Luke is almost as bad as her. In fact, Luke is the grandfather of every generic, bland, forgettable, and highly overrated Chosen One archetype ever, and they both suffer from the same problems. So yes, I dislike Rey and Luke almost equally. So no, if you're going to call me sexist, you're fucking wrong, and you should promptly fuck off. Okay, now that I've gotten that out of the way, I should say, let's get on with the actual review. So, Star Wars The Force Awakens is not the worst thing ever, but it's also not the best thing ever. I think it's a perfectly serviceable, average Star Wars movie that actually managed to make it pretty high on my personal list of Star Wars films. Like, at number one, I have Return of the Jedi. Number two, I have Revenge. And then, at a distant number three, I'm going to put this one in. It's nowhere near as good as Revenge or Jedi, as far as I'm concerned, but it's leaps and fucking bounds over all the rest of them, if you ask me. And this is coming from a guy who generally does not have a very high opinion of the Star Wars films as films. Generally, I think that stuff, yes, both produced before and after Disney in the form of novels and comic books and stuff, is actually significantly better than pretty much all the movies, I would say. And a lot of the stuff Disney has produced lately that's actually supposed to lead up to The Force Awakens actually turned out to be significantly better than The Force Awakens itself. Yeah. So, what is the main problem with this film? Like, what keeps it from being great or good and just keeps it at a kind of decent/average level? Well, I really think that it's the writing that fucks everything up. Everything else is kind of there. Like, I really feel like the actors and their performances, I really feel like they give a shit. Like, these are actors who legitimately gave a damn while they were filming this, and they were trying their best with what they were given. J.J. Abrams actually managed to make a couple really good moments, and he actually makes a very visually appealing film. There's actually one big emotional punch moment in the third act that's probably my favorite shot from, like, the entire Star Wars film saga. Yeah, it was that good. A bit on the nose, maybe even cheesy, I would say, but I thought it looked pretty freaking sweet. And I think you guys are going to guess it because I don't want to spoil it for everybody else. And some of the fight scenes, of course, were great. Nothing too amazing. But Steve, the Wonder Stormtrooper versus Finn, that was awesome. Just the way he just tosses his shield and he's like, "Fight me!" It was pretty great. And like I said, so the visual effects and the actors and the performances, I think that they're all really, really good. Harrison Ford really gives a shit. Like, he's kind of gotten this bad reputation as the grumpy grandpa actor who's like always stern and bored and stuff. But here, he's back to being Han Solo. He's a lot of fun. He probably has some of the most emotionally effective scenes in the entire movie, which kind of get bogged down because everybody else is not done particularly great. And so we get to the part where I'm going to complain about the movie. And my biggest complaint is the writing. The writing is absolutely fucking horrible at exposition. It's atrocious. Like, unless you've read ancillary material like I have, or you keep up with ancillary information that comes out from interviews, or you go to Wikipedia and stuff, you will not understand what the hell anybody is doing in this movie. And this is kind of a big problem because this doesn't feel like the beginning of a trilogy. This feels like the second act or 1.5 type movie between the first and the second one. The conflict we have going on here is verbatim a copy of what we already saw in the original trilogy. And you have this, situation where the New Republic kind of exists, but it's barely present in the movie, and then Leia's leading something called the Resistance against the First Order, which is these shambling remains of the Empire. And because the film really does a bad job of explaining just the whole political situation that's in the film itself without any ancillary material to help you out, you're just going to be left scratching your head and wondering what the hell is going on. Like, who are these people? Like, where's the Republic? Like, did Return of the Jedi's ending do nothing? Did the Republic not, do anything? Like, why are these guys fighting the Empire still called the Resistance? Like, why isn't this the Republic Army? There's a lot of that stuff just on a political level that is not explained at all and just makes you feel like you've just been thrown into the middle of something where you have no context whatsoever given through you throughout the whole duration of the movie. And this lack of exposition also really hurts the characters, and this whole idea of making this a 1.5 movie instead of a legitimate, entry point into the new trilogy. Entire character arcs have already happened completely off screen, and you're supposed to care about them like you've seen them, but you haven't seen them. And since the movie does a really fucking awful job of expositioning stuff to you, all that stuff with Kylo Ren about how he always had too much Vader in him, or how he was always conflicted between the light and the dark, it just goes completely over your head. And this would be fine if the movie itself tried to show you that Kylo Ren was conflicted. That's kind of like the whole point of his character. He's supposed to be someone who's really conflicted between the light and the dark, but he's not. He constantly mind rapes people with, Force abilities. He throws almost homicidal temper tantrums. He's completely blatantly evil and pretty sociopathic in a lot of respects. And the movie's trying to pass him off as this tormented soul, this guy who's constantly battling between his inner light and inner dark, when nothing in the film at all backs this claim up. And this is why a lot of the character stuff in this film feels either really forced, really wonky, or downright bad. And that's really a shame because, like I said, the performances are really good. The guy who plays Finn, John Boyega, he has a lot of fun in the role. Kylo Ren, played by Adam Driver, he gives a shit. I can see that he's trying, but the material he's given is not great. And that's why a lot of the subpar, downright bad writing really bogs down a lot of the characters. Another big example is Finn himself. Finn, in the first few minutes of the movie, gets shell-shocked from seeing, the carnage of war, and he immediately defects from the First Order. Now, this in and of itself really blew my mind just how rushed it is. Like, this guy went through, a whole movie's worth of character development in, 5 minutes. And I know that there's a book called Before the Awakening that's supposed to fill you in on who Poe Dameron is, who Rey is, who Finn is, and that stuff. But from the context of the film itself, without reading it like more hardcore fans like I am will, you're not going to get it. You're just going to see this movie, you're going to think to yourself, I guess that makes sense, but the way the film presents it is really weird. Because he sees, a stormtrooper friend of his die, and this is not a spoiler. This happens, the first 5 minutes of the movie. So if you're going to bitch about me complaining the movie, fuck off. He sees one of his stormtrooper buddies die. And it's supposed to be, this really shocking scene, but there's no setup. We don't know who Finn is at this point. We don't know who his friend is. We haven't gotten to know these guys. And it's really weird because later on, it's a weird scene because the movie's trying to sell you on this whole thing of, oh man, Finn saw one of his comrades die, and it really shocks him and stuff. And then he sees a whole village die, and it really shocks him. And what's the next thing he does? He goes on a fucking rampage and kills dozens of other stormtroopers and dozens of other Imperial personnel, laughing like a crazy person. and having fun with it, obviously. And so, you see where I'm going with this? Like, the character arcs that are trying to be pushed through the movie are really compelling. Like a stormtrooper rebelling against the First Order and going to the good guys is really good. This guy who's really conflicted between the light and the dark side is a really compelling type of story. But the problem is, the way the movie handles these things, it just doesn't work. The movie either does a really poor job of explaining and presenting why this character is acting like this way, or it just presents contradictory information, as was the case with Finn. And then there are other characters who just don't work at all. At all. And her name is Rey. Rey is a Mary Sue. And like I said in the intro, before you call me sexist or whatever the fuck, I hate Luke almost as much as I hate Rey. But Luke, I only barely tolerate because the stuff with him and Vader in Return of the Jedi is probably one of the few moments in the original trilogy where I actually kind of find Luke a bit interesting. But the problem with Luke is, as I said, is that he is the archetype for every generic chosen one type guy ever. He's bland enough where you can self-insert yourself into his role and, imagine yourself in this position, but he's not so personality-less that you can just call him a blatant self-insert, even though I would argue he probably is, given the fact that he has no fucking personality whatsoever. And Rey kind of has that too, except Rey has one personality trait, and, well, she has two personality traits, and one's an actual personality trait, and the other one is just her entire point of existence. And everything else, and her whole specialness thing is amped up and hyped up way, way, way too much. Every time she does something she shouldn't be able to do with the Force, not with piloting the Force, it really annoyed the shit out of me. There are entire moments later on in the third act where I was almost cringing myself to death from some of the shit she was doing. Like, she manages to use Force abilities and Force techniques and lightsaber techniques she should have absolutely no business doing. Like, the original trilogy is obviously sucking Luke's balls. That much is true. But in Empire Strikes Back, Luke gets his ass kicked. Like, when he goes, like, he has a little bit of training, then he goes to fight Vader, and what happens? He gets his ass kicked, which is one of the few times the movie it's one of the few times where the original trilogy kind of breaks the Chosen One trope, because usually in those kinds of stories, the Chosen One just gets some magical power up and then they win and they beat the bad guy, even though they shouldn't have any business beating the bad guy. And Empire Strikes Back doesn't do that. But there's a big moment near the end of the film where Rey is in a similar position and Yu-Gi-Oh! Logic kicks in. Like, she's getting her ass kicked, yada, 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 and you think that for a second the film has stopped sucking Rey's metaphorical balls. But then Yu-Gi-Oh! Logic kicks in, and then she closes her eyes, and then she starts to believe in the heart of the cards. And then she just whoops everybody's ass. It's completely contrived. It's completely obnoxious. Characters immediately liking her and trusting her is complete bullshit. It's the same problem Finn has, where he's a lying coward and an ex-Imperial officer, and yet everybody unconditionally trusts him. No problem whatsoever. In fact, with Finn, it even gets pretty borderline comical. With Rey, it's completely obnoxious, where there are whole lines of dialogue where one character tells her, oh yeah, like, this guy really likes you, even though you've had fuck all scenes together and you've said exactly jack shit to each other. This character already likes you enough to die for you or whatever. And then there's a lot of problems between character relationships as well. Rey and Finn kind of works, I guess, because it's like one of those situations where if you're with someone through enough crazy shit like these two are, you're going to get close, and so that's fine. But Poe and Dameron buddy it up way too quickly. The relationship between Kylo Ren and a certain other someone, like I said, is really bad. It's really non-existent because the film does a really bad job of explaining just what kind of relationship they had before, because everybody talks in vague, nondescript bullshit speak. And then there's some other characters who were just utilized really weirdly. Poe Dameron was supposed to die. That's not a spoiler because he doesn't die in the movie, but it's blatantly obvious he was supposed to die because there's a moment where he just disappears for like 2 hours and then just shows up again out of fucking nowhere, which the novelization does admittedly give him an extra scene that explains how he gets to where he gets and why he survives a certain something. But in the film, it's blatantly obvious that Poe Dameron was supposed to die, and the only reason he didn't die is because Oscar Isaac is playing him, and you're not just going to kill a guy played by Oscar Isaac, obviously. It's not going to happen. Chewbacca does nothing, which is not surprising because Chewbacca has never done anything in these movies, and I don't even understand why people like him anymore. C-3PO is thankfully not in it much. I hate that guy's guts. R2-D2 also isn't in it a lot, but I will say, out of the new additions, I really like BB-8. BB-8 has a lot more personality. He has a lot more of an appealing design than basically any other droid I've seen in the entire universe, and he and Finn have one of the best and one of the funniest scenes in the entire movie. It's probably my favorite part of the whole film, if you ask me. It's a really small moment, but it's so cute, it's so funny, it just works. And in the movie's defense, it actually does have a lot of really good humor, because the acting isn't as weird and kind of bad like it is in a lot of the other movies, and because the actors are a bit better here. A lot of the dialogue delivery works exceptionally well. They have really great comedic timing, especially, like I said, John Boyega. Even Rey has a couple of really funny moments with other characters. And like I said, Harrison Ford brings his A game. He's really having a blast in this. And I will say this, that the movie is fun while you watch it. It's not one of those things where you're just going to be thinking to yourself, oh man, like this is stupid, this doesn't work, and yada, yada, yada. Although there were a couple of moments like that, like a lot of the Rey scenes, like I said before, didn't work for me. The Snoke stuff was why? Because they make a whole big deal about Snoke, and Snoke is supposed to be like the Palpatine figure of the sequel trilogy. And they got the guy who played Gollum to do motion capture for him here. And you think like whoa, like that guy's like an expert. I know I usually know his name, but I've just forgotten it for some reason. Sorry guys, I just forgotten his name here. But he is kind of like an expert in motion capture. And the way he was talking about Snoke was like, whoa, like this guy's going to look really weird. Like he's going to be like this freaky alien dude, and it's going to look so cool. And then when you see him in the movie, it's... oh god, why? Like, you could have done it with makeup. Like, you did not need this kind of actor, this kind of professional actor for this particular field of acting to play such a throwaway role, because he's just evil, generic dude who's like, nyeh, nyeh. And it's not even like the fun nyeh, nyeh of Ian McDermott's Palpatine, because, I mean, say what you will about Palpatine, but the dude was a blast to listen to, especially in the prequels, and especially in Revenge of the Sith. Like that dude was having so much fun, and he was so evil and slimy and fun, and he really brought a lot of gravitas to the character, because while he was able to be all nyeh, nyeh, and slimy and evil, he also really came off as kind of like a smart, intelligent, and intentionally intimidating figure, and a real mastermind. Snoke is like that if you take away all of Palpatine's charm, his entire appeal, basically, his skill set, and you just make him a completely generic, evil, I have a deep voice because I am evil guy. And that's a shame. Really waste of time. Like, I was really hoping that the way they were talking about creating him, how he couldn't be done with makeup and stuff, I really thought he was going to be like some freaky alien-looking dude. Like, he's going to be like a Spider-Man or something. Not that Spider-Man, like an actual Spider-Man or something, like some kind of original cool design. And that's kind of what this movie is lacking, really. Technically speaking, the movie actually looks pretty damn good. I really like the new designs for the stormtroopers. I think they look pretty freaking awesome, and I like some of the stuff that's done with the stormtroopers, how they're not quite as useless as they used to be. Like I said, Steve, the Wonder Trooper, is like the greatest thing ever. He has like an electric nunchuck type thing that can block a lightsaber, and he challenges Finn to a duel, which was one of the funniest moments in the whole movie, and it was legitimately awesome. Like, just seeing a stormtrooper be like, "Let us duel to the death," and it was great. But that being said, despite the film technically looking fine, I feel like it lacks a lot of visual flair. All the planets look, like I said, fine. Like Maz Kanata's planet looks fine. The Star Killer base looks fine. Jakku looks fine. And that's kind of like the big thing I can just say about the entire film at the end. It's fine. Like, I know I've just spent 20 minutes bitching about it, and there is a lot of bitched about it, but I can't deny the fact that the film actually is really entertaining to watch. If you turn your brain off and just view this as yet another Star Wars movie, you're going to probably love it, like a lot of people are. If you're someone who doesn't really care about delving deeper into movies, you're probably going to love it. But this is the Avengers of the Star Wars franchise, as far as I'm concerned. It's a generic, average at best movie that kind of gets away with the general audience because it panders to a lot of the stuff the general audience likes about Star Wars. But for guys like me, you, and others, it's going to be an average at best movie that's really murdered by its bad writing. And I heard Ryan Johnston I don't know if it's Ryan Johnston or whatever, but the guy who did Looper, the director of that, is going to direct and write Episode 8. And from the way he's talking about the movie, it seems like it's going to be a bit of a different beast than this. And Joey, the guy from DC Prime that I've had on here for a couple of times, he actually presented the idea of that this is supposed to be like the Avengers of Star Wars. Like, this is supposed to be the big panderous waste of time, money, and everything that's just supposed to hook people back in so that the sequels can do a lot better job with the characters, with the story, with the world building. I hope that's the case, because I actually do think there is a lot of potential here for this movie. It's just that the first entry of it, which doesn't really feel like a proper first entry, really, from the way the story is constructed, is pretty painfully average. And that kind of annoys me, because like if your movie is gonna suck, please make it suck completely so I can just unapologetically hate it. But don't average it. Like, average implies like there's some stuff that's good and then other stuff that's not, and that could have been better, and then you're just teasing everybody by how good the movie almost tangibly was but couldn't because you fucked up somewhere. Like, don't do that. Like, if you're gonna make a shitty movie, just make it shitty all the way and spare us guys who like to think about how it could have been better the pain of thinking about it. So yeah, Star Wars The Force Awakens. It's an alright movie. If you're a casual fan of Star Wars, you're going to love the hell out of it. You've probably even seen it like 5 times already, but if you're someone, not even you're a hardcore fan of Star Wars, like if you're just someone who likes to make these movies be a little bit smarter when it comes to the writing and stuff, yeah, you're probably not in for a good time.